AI Realized, the podcast about everything that is new, now, and next for enterprise executives deploying AI. Hosted by myself, Christina Elwood, and my collaborator, David Yakobovich.
Our guests will share what's driving AI adoption, use cases, and business models for the data and AI economy.
Where the future is bright.
Welcome to AI Realized, the podcast for enterprise executives leading AI deployments. From tackling security, data, and operational challenges to navigating organizational transformation, AI deployment offers a unique opportunity to redesign our organizations from the inside out. I'm Christina Elwood, your host for today's episode, and today we are talking with Karthik SJ, the GM of LogicMonitor. In this episode, we're going to talk about observability. IT leaders are being asked to do so much more today in running these AI operations in parallel with their traditional IT operations. They're increasingly complex hybrid systems that are running at the speed and efficiency that the business expects, but are challenging with these new infrastructures. Observability is really critical. In fact, it's no longer just about dashboards. It's about turning telemetry into decisions and decisions into actions. And that's why I'm excited to talk with Karthik today and welcome Karthik to the show.
Thank you, Christina. I'm glad to be here.
You bring so much experience to this conversation. Your experience at public companies like SAP and your experience in private companies as well. As we dig into the AI-powered observability and what that means in practice and how enterprises that use AI can move from a reactive monitoring to a proactive operation, why don't you set the table for us about why this is such a challenge and what as the first step for any enterprise executive to manage their AI deployment responsibly?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think you live in such a fascinating time where with all this AI and someone tells me my Zoom connection is running slow or I can't hear you and our outages that happened. We saw that a couple of years back where airlines got crippled and lost like millions of dollars, or banks were down for 5 days in these times and people can't do payments. And that's happening with all the AI in the world, and we are still vulnerable to some of these outages, and you notice it and you could bring things to a grinding halt. And so the answer is not to slow down and stop innovation, but the answer is how do you build systems that are resilient with the pace of change that are there today and what to expect, right? And so I call it like really going from firefighting to fire prevention, and IT operation teams have been designed like 20 years back, 30 years back with this. Everything was meant and for these teams to look at alerts and systems, and there's a lot of manual work in the mix. And I'm calling for a time to relook at this because we have normalized what I call 3 a.m. pages or 200 people war rooms and just doing busy work. And we got to just flip this and say, you know what, hold on. Is this the best efficient use of people's time? These are system issues. Something's happening in the network. I can't even find this network. I can't go to the data center. What better way to use agents than looking at system data? So that's what I'm really excited about when you look at observability. Is it's not just about collecting the data, but what insights is it telling you? That I call it the category of unknown unknowns.
You bring up really two issues. You bring up the speed, how fast things are changing, but also how fast they're operating. And you also bring up the complexity. Is one of those driving the challenge of observability more than the other?
I would say complexity was happened gradually over time. Like people kept buying a lot of software and they had specialized departments to do the network and the security and the application. And we just created complexity gradually. And then suddenly with AI, everything became like yesterday. So speed, I would say, is both gradually and suddenly. But yeah, the AI thing has completely flipped the script on speed and expectations because it's no longer okay to ship your product once in 6 months and tell my customer, you know what, wait for 6 months for the roadmap to come, because we live in a dynamic times where if you don't do it, there's probably some kid out of a Stanford dorm building the next unicorn startup, right? And so you got to be the cost of innovation or the cost of AI is coming down, and so you really got to figure out that it's not access to AI anymore. Everybody will have access to AI, but it's what you do with AI is going to count. And so that's why speed is paramount in today's times. And we personally went from, when I started, from a quarterly to a weekly to almost now a daily shipment.
I see. So but that reminds me of just CI/CD type infrastructures that with SaaS brought this model to the forefront that we could deploy frequently and we could back up too. We could undeploy, if you will, if we deployed something that wasn't really meeting expectation or what have you. So how does that look? How is it different with AI than it was, say, with SaaS and SaaS models? You've pointed to the network a couple times. Is it related to the deployment architecture or is it related to the technology?
No, it's a very good question. And I would say fundamentally, the layers of the stack, someone has the surface areas increase so much. If issues happen today, which they will, because it could be a manual one, or could be a system, could be a partner, could be third party, the time people are spending to get to the root cause, yeah, is a lot, right? Because they got to, it's like process of elimination. And you start, is it the network? Nope. Is it the application? Nope. Is it, I mean, it could be a change that somebody pushed and that caused the issue. So my point is, if you have the way to scale this investigation, I call it AI investigations, is not to hire more people to look at 10 different tools. The way to do it is let agents go investigate in parallel with all your tools and all your infra and all your data, come back and tell you, hey, Christina, here's a hypothesis of what I think is happening. Is it going to be right all the time? Probably not. But if 8 out of 10 times you got it right, I'll take that because that saved me millions of dollars in a potential outage.
Also, it saved a bunch of hours of time that could be put in on the 20% that it didn't find, right? The thing about the agents is they're the cause of the problem and the source of the solution, aren't they? The problem with the agents is they are not a static thing. They aren't like a SaaS platform where for a period of time it is a thing. Okay, until you deploy the next release, you know what you've deployed. All right. With an agent, it's changing all the time. The agent is never the same from the time you deploy it to when something may be going awry. So it's a rapidly changing element. There are many of them. There are going to be many more of them. Some of them inside our firewall, some of them from outside our firewall or going outside our firewall. So the troubleshooting problem, I think, is really for agentic systems is rooted in some ways in the beauty of agents, which is their ability to be context specific. So that helps you when you're troubleshooting, but it also causes the problem. So how do you balance, or not even balance? What's your strategy for going about, I don't know, not just observability of agents, but actually troubleshooting problems related to agentic systems?
Yeah, I think this is early days. And I would say, in some ways, pick a narrow scope, try not to overpromise in terms of the expectations. And so, of course, our vision is always aggressive. Like we want to do self healing ultimately, where agents can detect and tell, investigate, and fix your infra before you even wake up and you got to know there's an outage. So, that imagine that kind of scenario. And you're not too far away from that. But to get there, the journey. And so, what we've been really doubling down is on guardrails and making sure that whatever use case we pick, it has high precision and high confidence and high trust, because getting this wrong, it could mean millions of dollars in terms of an outage. So you cannot afford to be like, you know what, I'm not sure if this AI is something that's accurate or not. So the number one thing is like guardrails, high accuracy, build the trust. Once you build the trust of the operator, then you get to the next use case that gives you the right to the next use case. And I call this agency. There's a spectrum of agency. And we started with pretty much just predictive AI. It's not even generative, because predictive AI, you 100% guarantee reliability in what it's going to predict. It's using AI nevertheless, but it's still much more predictive. And then you can slowly start to relax that as you gain trust. And so we've been using agents for things like investigations. What is the alternative to that? The alternative to investigations is you having to pour yourself into hundreds of alerts from 5 different tools, which I don't think anyone wants to do these days. No one wants to look at alerts. I start the day at 3 a.m. and it's all pretty technical and jargon. And so I think we've picked use cases where it's almost a no-brainer. But the holy grail, like I said, is really automation. Are people ready to trust AI to fully automate? Not everybody. And so the question is, it's a journey. So you got to get them through the journey. Otherwise, you can't just jump to automation today, because They don't want to trust it yet.
It's not trustworthy yet either, is it?
Correct.
Right. There is that problem too. I'm struck by your description of the way in which you think about troubleshooting because it reminds me of some writing that Meher Hanafi has done and shared with our community about building AI applications. And he talks about in his AI framework, he talks about the three O's: orchestration, observability, and optimization. And that sounds parallel to what you just described. Do you see those as two sides of the same coin?
It's absolutely the whole loop, right? If you think about it, first, can I see what's happening in my environment? And now with the surface area increasing, we had an outage, I think earlier this year with a bank, and it had nothing to do with their own observability. It had everything to do with the partner's observability. A mainframe system that they use, the backup went down, they had a power failure. Not only the power go out, the backup also went out. So talk about everything going wrong. But the result was 5 day outage almost. I think it was almost 5 day outage. And you could not send money, the payment services were disrupted. But the reason I give you that example is observability is such a key thing. Is first you got to know what's your surface area, what are you, and also your external signals. And so we call that internet ISP providers, what's happening there. And so you really got to increase the surface area of your observability, right? And then
So in this case, the bank being able to observe beyond its own infrastructure and being able to observe the other banks or being able to detect when there is okay, that's a detection problem. And so how does that how would you orchestrate for the bank that was the victim here?
great question. I call this from firefighting to fire prevention. So what you're looking for is not fire. The fire is already too late. You need, CPO says, yeah, Smokey the Bear, right? And so you need smoke signals in your IT environment. And there's smoke. What happens today, most of the time, when you find smoke, people ignore it because I have fires burning. Should I look at the smoke or should I look at the fire? I'm going to pay attention to the fire because that's more obvious. But guess what? This smoke right here could end up being a firestorm in 2 weeks if you don't pay attention. So how do you know? That's where AI comes in. Is I can help you with smoke signals, and I can tell you, Christina, go investigate the smoke. Is this something real, or is this just a false alarm? And it doesn't cost you to go investigate with AI. Like you could pour in, it's unlimited elasticity. Like you could run as many investigations as you can. It's only a factor of compute and tokens, but you don't have to hire 200 people to do investigations all the time. So you're trying to keep your systems resilient and run this smoke investigations on smoke. Because you know what? That bank, I bet you if it saw the smoke, but it could not react to it because it was expensive or ignored it. And that ended up being an outage. So we want to get system companies to go from like reactive to proactive, look at the smoke, and then even optimize. Optimization is a continuous thing. How do I get my cost in order and use the right infrastructure, right size it? So I see this as a continuous loop of observability, orchestration, and optimization. Yeah, that's a great take.
Yeah, I think it makes really good sense in both contexts. So going back to your smoke analogy, I agree with you that agents provide a highly elastic and cost-effective way of detecting the smoke and even potentially using predictive analytics to determine what is going to rise to the level of potential fire. That's a great analogy. However, it's not free. So how do you allocate the resources between firefighting and smoke detection?
No, and I try to give this example of an insurance company, right? And as we are looking at agent pricing and consumption and usage, so we do offer customers a way to get started and offer them, hey, here's how many investigations you can run, build the trust and proof points that you're looking. So a customer would come to us and say, you know what, I had this outage 2 weeks back. Let's give LogicMonitor's Edwin AI tool a run and see if you're able to catch it. And so we can go proactively back and see if we caught it. And so that builds trust. And then they want to run a few of this and they compare and see, had this outage happened 2 weeks back and had I had Edwin, I would have saved 5 hours of a downtime.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a smart way for anyone to sell a solution like yours because, of course, we all wait for the horse to be out of the barn before we shut the door, right? That's just human nature that we do it that way. So and I want to take a moment to just give people a grounding in what is Logic Monitor because we haven't really talked about that. But from a cost perspective, when you go in with that situation where you're doing that retrospective analysis to build the confidence of the customer that LogicMonitor could have detected this issue before it became a fire. Is that a fixed price? Is it free? Is it somehow bounded in a way that makes it a no-brainer? What does that look like?
There are various flavors. We're seeing how customers get to experience the software. We see a lot of companies today in the industry with agent host companies. I've never seen anything like it in my career. This amazing PLG, product led growth. You could go in, and I've seen Cursor do that pretty well. You could sign up and experience the software and get to use it. Developers and engineers are bringing that back to the enterprise. And so product led growth is with AI is very getting supercharged, because I've never seen anything like it, where we did have premium and all in the days, but this is something else, because you need to get to value realization really quick and cut through the noise. And so if you could experience value in a software, and so our goals are, how do we get customers and users to experience value in a highly context situation? And that could be and you can get a slice of it that depending on what meets your budget, but it could be a PLG motion where it's for no cost. It could be a paid POV where you want something more bespoke, or it could be a full on paid pilot, or sometimes people just, you know what, I have enough proof points, I'm willing to take the full plunge. But ultimately, what's going to happen, I think, going forward is there's going to be more scrutiny on ROI and proof points, because we have reached the point where I think the promise is there, but unless it's married with a use case that can show what I call a painkiller category, or is it a vitamin, right? So I say at least IT operations is a painkiller category, meaning it has all the elements of like high stakes. These are outages. It has a high volume problem, and it's highly repetitive. Like there's absolutely no way anybody's going to say, I'm going to hire 100 people to look at alerts for my tools. No one's going to do that in 2026. And so that's what I say. I tell people is, when you're trying to apply AI, focus more on the problem, less on the technology, because I get caught up with the tech, and you miss the big picture. But follow the pain, solve the problem, and look at workflows that people are willing to replace and not wanting to do. And you got to also take them on the journey. Sometimes it's a change management, Christina. Our champions are so used to doing it in a certain way that I have to tell them, guys, this is not best use of your time. And it's a change management process. So taking them on the human element is also important.
Who's the ideal buyer for a product like yours? Is it an enterprise, a very large, complex enterprise that would have a huge, even global footprint? Or is it someone who is more middle tier company or even small? What is the size and ICP of your target?
Yeah, we sell to all sorts of customers, and both, I would say, enterprise customers and also managed service providers, and across different verticals like healthcare and financial services and manufacturing. And if you see customers like, yeah, IHG hotels, if you have a bad customer experience in terms of things aren't working in your portal, you would definitely have a LogicMonitor alert there that can help you tell you what's going on. Or if you play Top Golf is one of our also reference customers. And if a bay is down and you have a bad experience, and that affects their own how they are delivering their value to customers and end users, so we get notified and we can help bring those bays back online. So yeah, there's several industries, and it's because, like I said, the problem is pretty horizontal. It appeals to anybody that needs to deliver a good end user experience. And our mission is to try the business and end user experience to the IT infrastructure. And
I see. So I should think of it as a customer facing use case, that if I'm doing customer experience, user experience, I would want your tool for monitoring that type of a system as opposed to, say, an internal kind of.
it's an invisible layer. You're right. It's an invisible layer. You don't see it, but it's what keeps things up and running.
Gotcha, gotcha. And so I always think it's interesting to when you're trying to do value-based either pricing or just value-based retention of customers, and you're in the kind of business that you're in where you're trying to keep the fire from becoming smoke. How do you represent or how do you show through the product to your customers where you've prevented something so that they can measure the ROI and avoided problems?
Yeah, great question. I would say that there's two categories of ROI and what we're looking at. There's the hard ROI where people can measure those cost savings and say, hey, you know what, I can go back to the business. And there's a soft ROI, which is also important, but it's really something more, maybe not CFO friendly when you talk about AI tools and ROI and productivity. So I would say from a hard ROI, Look, the problems we're solving in terms of, like I said, if you have 100,000 alerts, Christina, that a CIO's team has to look at every day, and we reduce those 100,000 alerts to 1,000 alerts that are actionable, and everything else is noise. That is less time for your team to correlate alerts and triage alerts, because everybody's, oh, is this, do I pay attention to it? Is there a network issue? So that's number one. The second one is really, we talk about tickets. Everything, people start their work today in IT as it's a ticket. And so if those tickets go to an ITSM vendors, pick your favorite, there are lots of ITSM vendors out there, but the work typically starts with a ticket, and we help cut down the volume of tickets teams need to look down. So some customers are realizing savings of 70% fewer tickets to look at day to day, giving them time back. So I call it more avoided IT costs. So you can scale more with the same team, or you can repurpose them to other functions. And then there is these peak ones, peak events, which outages, where if it goes down and you're losing millions of dollars, we can help you get back online really quick. Instead of a 5 hour outage, it could have been 5 minutes.
So you can measure that also in the time to resolve.
And measure that also with time, if we call it time to resolve or time to recover. And the last one is productivity. I don't need to look at and stare at dashboards. They all light up like a Christmas tree, and I'm like scrambling. I don't know what do I pay attention to it. But instead of looking at 47 dashboards, Christina, I could use agents to investigate real time. I call it vibe debugging or vibe troubleshooting. You have vibe coding, you also need vibe troubleshooting. Get the agents to go investigate real time and build you the dashboards you want in context. Why would you have your IT team backlogged with 50 dashboards and you don't even look at half of those? I never look at many dashboards these days. I just want real-time data and real-time answers to the problem I'm solving at this point of time.
Do you have an interrogation feature? This is one of the things that I think is really novel about these analytical systems, is you can ask questions of the data. Do you have that too? And do you find that to be popular with your users?
Absolutely. So we have a query language, and in asking it in this query and learning the query language, you could just ask in plain language, and you know what to ask for. And hey, which of my sites are affected and which ones are really down, and it would go query and come back with an answer. And so absolutely. And things where things are going is what I'm realizing is the experience is less about speeds and feeds and more about give me the whole dashboard. Like I don't even know what is a good dashboard. If you're a CRO and you need these 5, 6 tiles and these trend charts, give me the whole thing. So what I'm telling you is like it's going from like an individual chart and an individual tile to the whole dashboard. And I'll take it if it's good enough. Like I also have this concept of what I call good enough AI. Like people over engineer on trying to make the perfect AI. Humans are not perfect. Why should AI be perfect? I'd say if it's good enough AI, take it and run with it, because that's saving you a ton of time.
I'm very interested in how you're combining predictive analytics with the more good enough AI side of the product. How is that happening in your organization, and where do you think that's going?
Yeah, and we over-index so much on generative AI, and it's good in certain cases. I would also see you got to keep a eye on the cost and the cogs. And is it really, do you need this Ferrari for the use case? Probably not. And so we've been pragmatic in that sense, and that's really given us an opportunity to flex where we need to. But the predictive AI we're using is for clustering. So it looks at a bunch of alerts and it clusters it. We just use unsupervised algorithms, or we don't need training. So it works straight off the oven. But the point is, like, yeah, we've been getting 80-90% noise reduction off the gate. Of course, I could use a LLM for that, but that will just take 10x more tokens. I don't need to do it if I'm getting the ROI from this. We use a combination of both where it makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. And also, I'm hearing more and more about people using what I think of as logic layers, where they logically connect the things that are related so that they're not looking at the LLM or the predictive analytics to do that, because that wiring is fixed anyway. And so the ability to map those into some kind of, I don't know what kind of layer you would call it because I'm not an architect, but
We call it
it's a
knowledge graph. Yeah.
Oh, the knowledge graph. Okay, yeah. So, like in a knowledge graph, I suppose that's a great example of it. I think there are different strategies that I'm hearing people using. But yes, that makes sense to me. And how transparent do your customers expect you to be in how that decision making is going on? Because in responsible AI, we also care about transparency, and we care about accountability as well. And the more you are being your this type of strategy, of looking for the source of the problem and bubbling up only the things that require human attention means we're relying a lot on the system to be making good decisions. And how do we know?
Yeah, this is so critical to build trust again with your users, and so not to be overconfident. So we've been really focused on, I think for the predictive AI, Christina, we gave what's called an AI workbench. So you could see what models we use, what's the attributes, how is it doing correlation. Guess what? Many of our customers build their own models, and that's fine. And like we give them the tools, and they don't need data science degree. They know the domain knowledge, and they can apply that and get the models going, and they get the output they want. On the generative AI side, with AI investigations, if I give you a root cause and I need to tell you how confident I am, so we give confidence scores. Okay, it's medium or high confidence, and anything below medium, we don't even show you. And then there's this feedback loops where with evals, you can say, I'm a domain expert. I would have written this root cause slightly differently. And so we capture that feedback. And that's something we are obviously investing in is like, how do we get human feedback, incorporate that into the model and make it better and make it more as part of the pipeline as opposed to one-off thing which you're doing outside the product. You want to make it a part of the product experience. So that's something we're doing is we're capturing it more in part of the pipeline.
Gotcha. It sounds like this product is going to be very valuable and important, especially to organizations for whom customer experience is critical. So, would I think of those as companies that are consumer oriented?
Yeah, it could be consumer enterprises. We have customers that are like healthcare providers where they're manufacturing vials, and if they get that wrong and they're outage, they have to literally throw away the vials, and that's super expensive for them. And so I would say yes, consumer enterprises. We also have managed service providers that are being also using this AI as a way to transform their own operations. What kind of work do they do? How do they give a better experience to their customers? How do they be more proactive to their clients? So it's all across the board. That's what makes me really excited. It's not unique to any industry or any category. It's pretty much horizontal.
Yeah, I think the managed service provider is such a natural fit, right? They get it coming and gone. So, as we reach the end of our time together today, I'm curious about what you would most like our enterprise executives to take away from the conversation today as they think about their own AI deployments.
I've been doing this for a while. I would say at SAP, back then we called it machine learning. And when I was at a startup, this was pre-chat GPT. So a lot of battle scars deploying AI. And then out here, and I think what's fascinating for me is I'm a builder at heart. I love building, creating value, and obviously transforming customers and users' experience along the way. That's great. And my thing is, I would say, and I was at Vegas for 2 weeks back to back, reInvent and Gartner, and I would be like, this is the time to place your bets. I think you must have read our material, must have spoken to a lot of your peers. You may have a few things on the sidelines. 2026 is the time to go all in, place your bets, and you learn more through the deployment with scoping it the right way and sitting on the sidelines. And I think there is more benefit than to sit out.
So, do you have resources that you can recommend to listeners to act on that advice and to learn more about you and your work at LogicMonitor?
Absolutely. I listen to your podcast and your newsletter. So that's a great source to start with. Yeah. Also check out logicmonitor.com. We have some great resources there. And yeah, no, I think in general, I keep a keen eye on, I listen to Rennie's podcast. That's another one I like to understand how practitioners are really using it. And the great thing about being in the Valley is, yeah, I could go to a meetup and people are more than generous to share, which is pretty fascinating. I haven't seen that like founders and entrepreneurs just sharing what's going on, what's working, not working. And that's what makes this so great of a place is like people are really happy to help out and share what's worked for them.
Yeah, I really love that too. And specific to your call to executives to get off the sideline, are there any resources that you think are particularly useful to taking the plunge?
Yeah, I would say in terms of the I've been using tools like Replit personally. I mean, I started as an engineer and then I became a product manager and now a GM. There was a story I'll tell you where I was going to an EAP customer advisory board and a customer gave me feedback. And normally I would talk to my designer and my PM and get a prototype going and a spec. I had none of those options available because I was on a flight and I couldn't get hold of them. And the only way was for me to use this tool. And I was like, I was forced myself to use Replit and ChatGPT. And I got a working prototype ready in a few hours through internet on the flight, right? And when I landed, that was a much better experience because he gave me feedback and I was able to go back and prototype it. So I think the point is going from idea to code is really key. The more you are spending time and deliberating it, we're losing cycles. So people want to react to software. And I think idea to code is going to be the big resource, I would say, and as for leaders and organizations, the sooner you can remove roadblocks from your teams and processes to go from idea to code, that's going to be game changing.
Gotcha. Okay, good advice. So in the AI era here, what it takes to lead a team or to be in a leadership role is changing. What is your personal defining edge as a leader in the AI era?
Now, that's a great question. I think it's the only thing stopping you today is your own limit and lack of imagination, right? And so I would say I like to inspire teams with a bold vision and relentless execution, right? That's really what it is. I think you got to dream big. You got to think about where things are going because these are not incremental workflow changes. These are transformational workflows. So you got to have, yeah, just because we did something 30 years doesn't mean it has to be the same. It's going to happen really fast. Otherwise, somebody else will tell you this is a new workflow. So I would say dream big and then focus on execution where you're shipping code because ultimately that's where rubber hits the road. Otherwise, we have this great material, but if it doesn't translate to software or anything the customers can touch and feel and where you can learn, it's the combination of the two that's going to be critical.
Thank you, Karthik SJ, the GM of LogicMonitor, for joining me today on AI Realized.
Pleasure. I really enjoyed those questions. They're super amazing. And yeah, thank you for continuing what you're doing.